Hi everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot, as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. Sunbeams, thick with dancing specks, pierced the library's lofty arched windows. Elora's fingers skimmed the delicate surface of an aged bestiary, its vellum stained amber by time. The usual comforting aroma of aged paper and dried botanicals felt oppressive today, laced with a disquieting current anticipation. Foreboding? For weeks, she'd delved into accounts of Ronan, the Shadow Alpha, and the affliction gripping him. Legends painted a portrait of primal darkness, a ravenous hunger corrupting his core, transforming him into a figure of terror. These tales were common knowledge, whispered around hearths as cautionary lessons to children about straying past twilight. Yet, Elora detected something more in the faded script and veiled verses. A spark of his former self, a trapped spirit wrestling the encroaching shadows. The texts hinted at a destined partner, a connection strong enough to break the spell, to cleanse the corruption. It was a fragile hope, a murmur against a tempest, but sufficient. Having dedicated herself to arcane knowledge, to deciphering the enigmas of heart and soul, Elora felt a profound conviction resonating within her. She was meant to be his salvation. A shiver coursed through her, not of fear, but something akin to acknowledgement. She closed the book, the library's silence closing in. The hour had come. Sleep offered no solace that night, instead ushering her into a perpetual gloaming. Gnarled, skeletal trees reached towards a bruised sky of violet and charcoal. The air reeked of decay, sharpened by the metallic scent of blood. Silhouetted against the horizon, a figure stood, immense, radiating waves of agony. Ronan. He didn't register her presence at first, engaged in a silent torment, his body contorting, his head thrown back in a noiseless cry. Then, his gaze snagged on her. The eyes of a wolf, untamed and blazing, yet beneath the bestial fury, she glimpsed a fragment of recognition? Despair? It flickered and died, replaced by a chilling, predatory hunger. He surged forward. Elora awoke with a jolt, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. The dream clung to her like grave clothes, the haunting image of Ronan's face branded into her mind. It wasn't a saccharine fantasy, it was a brutal glimpse into the abyss consuming him. Leaving the warmth of her bed, the cool stone floor grounded her. Fear remained, a frigid knot in her stomach, yet overshadowed by unyielding resolve. Retreat was unthinkable. Her decision solidified, Elora moved with renewed purpose. She began assembling necessities for the journey: desiccated herbs, potent draughts, tomes of healing and defense. Packing minimally, she knew she couldn't burden herself with her entire library. Besides, she'd already committed the most vital passages to memory. She paused before a small secured coffer tucked away in a corner. Inside, resting on velvet, lay a silver dagger, its hilt adorned with moonstones. A family heirloom, passed down through generations, each blade blessed with unique enchantments. This one offered protection against dark sorcery. It was a physical link to her lineage, a symbol of the strength flowing through her veins. Hesitation flickered as her fingers danced over the lock. Taking the dagger felt like a precipice, acknowledging the dangerous uncertainty that awaited. But she couldn't deny the truth: Ronan was imperiled, and so was she. She unlocked the chest and secured the dagger to her belt. The next morning, Elora stood before the ancient oak marking the border of her secluded haven. She had dwelled within these walls for close to a decade, dedicating herself to study, finding peace in the quiet cadence of her days. Now, she was forsaking it all, venturing into the unknown, compelled by a connection to a man she had never encountered. A man rumored to be a monster. She inhaled deeply, the cool morning air invigorating her. She knew the dangers, the stories. But turning back was not an option. Her fate lay beyond the sheltering branches of the oak, in the heart of the darkened forest where Ronan was captive. One last glance swept over the familiar stone walls, the ivy-draped towers, the refuge that had been her home. Then, jaw set with determination, she stepped across the boundary and into the wilderness. The forest pressed in, sunlight barely filtering through the dense canopy. The air hung thick with the scent of wet soil and decomposing foliage. Every rustle, every snap, sent a tremor through her. She felt watched. Following a faint trail, she relied on instinct and the fragmented clues gleaned from the ancient texts. The journey was taxing, testing her endurance and spirit. She tripped over exposed roots, scratched her hands on thorny vines, and fended off stinging insects. As twilight descended, splashing the sky with hues of apricot and lavender, she reached a clearing. At its center stood a decaying stone altar, veiled in moss and climbing plants. A place of primeval energy, where the border between worlds thinned. A guttural growl reverberated through the trees, scattering a flock of birds skyward. Ilara stilled, her hand instinctively finding the dagger at her hip. From the shadows emerged a pair of luminous yellow eyes, followed by the hulking form of a wolf, its fur midnight black. Larger than any she'd seen, its muscles flexed beneath its thick coat. Its gaze locked on her, predatory and fierce. Ilara stood firm, her heart hammering. This wasn't merely a wolf. This was Ronan, or a fragment of him. "Ronan," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I know you're in there." The wolf snarled, baring its fangs. It advanced, step by measured step, its eyes never wavering. "I'm here to help you," she continued, her voice unwavering. "I know about the curse. I know your ordeal." The wolf paused, its head cocked to the side. For a fleeting instant, she thought she saw a spark within its eyes, a glimmer of recognition. But the darkness surged back, intensifying the predatory gleam. With a thunderous roar, the wolf lunged. Ilara braced herself, ready to confront the beast before her. The beast holding the key to her destiny and the potential redemption of the man she was sworn to save. Or be destroyed by. Into the shadowed forest, Ilara pressed onward, the forest's damp breath, a mix of loam and decay, clinging to her cloak. Above, the sun's rays fractured through the dense canopy, dappling the forest floor with fleeting shadows. Each footfall cracked twigs underfoot, the sound magnified by the oppressive stillness, a stillness broken only by furtive rustlings and a distant bestial rumble that chilled her to the bone. She clutched the leather strap of her satchel, the familiar weight of the ancient texts a bulwark against her growing unease. Wolves, the musk of them, feral and sharp, overpowered the sweet stench of the forest's underbelly. Watched. She felt their unseen eyes, like polished jet beads, piercing the gloom. Halting, her fingers grazed the hilt of the silver knife at her side, not a weapon, yet, but a tangible reminder of her purpose. "I mean no harm," she announced, her voice steadier than her pulse. "I seek Ronan." A growl, closer now, answered. From the tangled thicket, two wolves materialized, gaunt and battle-scarred, their fur clotted with mud and a darker substance that twisted Ilara's stomach. Their gaze held not curiosity, but stark dread, an almost palpable thing. They circled, cautious, probing. "Ronan needs assistance," she declared, her tone resolute. "And I can render it." One of the wolves, a younger vixen with a ragged ear, crept nearer. Her eyes flickered with something akin to hope, or perhaps merely desperation. "Depart," the male rasped, his voice a coarse scrape. "He's beyond saving. He is, lost in darkness." "I won't leave," Ilara countered, meeting his gaze. "I gave my word," the vixen whimpered, nudging the male's flank. He snarled, then faced Ilara again, his eyes betraying a bleak resignation. "Go," he repeated, "before he finds you, before he alters you." He yielded, reluctantly opening a path deeper into the woods. Ilara hesitated, then advanced, her senses heightened. The temperature plummeted, the gloom intensified, and the silence pressed down with greater weight. The state of the pack's territory mirrored Ronan's internal struggle with painful clarity. What must have been a vibrant glade, a center of community and power, was now a tableau of decline and ruin. Crumbling dens slumped beneath the burden of rampant vines, their entrances clogged with detritus. The reek of decay was pervasive, laced with the coppery tang of blood and the biting stench of fear. The trees themselves seemed to recoil from the clearing, their branches contorted and barren, as if fleeing some invisible plague. She spotted them then, the other wolves, huddled in the shadows, their bodies pressed together for warmth and solace. They were emaciated and lethargic, their eyes vacant and haunted. They watched her pass with a mix of apprehension and curiosity, tails tucked low, ears flattened. Ilara paused by a dilapidated den, her hand resting on the rough bark of a neighboring tree. Murmured whispers drifted from within, barely audible above the breeze. She strained to hear, her heart hammering. "He's deteriorating." A youthful male's voice trembled. "He doesn't recognize any of us." "We must abandon this place," a female voice pleaded, edged with panic. "We must flee before he slays us all." "Where would we run?" an older female countered, her voice steeped in despair. "He'd hunt us down. He always has." "There must be something we can attempt," the young male insisted, his voice cracking. "There must be a method to halt him." "There is none," the older female said, her tone flat. "He's the Alpha. We remain bound to him." Anger surged through Ilara, a fierce indignation at the pervasive hopelessness. "He needn't be," she muttered, her fingers tightening into a fist. "He needn't be bound by the curse." She approached the den, her hand extended, her fingers brushing against the decaying wood. "I can aid him," she called out, her voice clear and ringing. "I can sever the curse." Abrupt silence stifled the whispers within. Then, a deep rumble emanated from the den, a guttural resonance that vibrated through the trees, sending a fresh wave of trepidation through Ilara. Not the growl of a wolf protecting its domain, but the sound of something ancient and malevolent, twisted beyond recognition. The sound of Ronan. A figure emerged from, quote, the den, silhouetted against the interior gloom. It was a towering form, broad-shouldered and powerfully built. Its head remained bowed, its face shrouded in shadow, but Ilara knew him. She felt his presence, a dark gravity that both attracted and repelled with its raw, untamed power. He lifted his head, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural intensity. Not the eyes of the man from her visions, the man who had populated her dreams. These were the eyes of a predator, frigid and remorseless, consumed by a bottomless hunger. "Leave," he snarled, his voice a low, guttural rasp that reverberated through the clearing. "This is my domain. You are not permitted here." Ilara stood firm, her heart pounding, her breath caught in her throat. She had journeyed too far to retreat now. She had given her word, and she was determined to uphold it, even if it meant confronting the darkness that had engulfed the man she had come to save. "I'm not intimidated by you, Ronan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, but her gaze unwavering. "I know you're still within there, somewhere, and I'm not departing until I discover you." The air pressed down on Ilara, a suffocating weight as she neared Ronan's stronghold. Less castle, less home. It was a grotesque effigy erected from fossilized timber and the ossified remains of monstrous beings. Perpetual twilight clung to the site, sunlight seemingly repelled. With each footfall, the ground whispered underfoot. A gritty lament rather than solid earth. Her wolf pack, their courage faltering, hadn't dared venture this far, their dread a palpable thing she could almost taste. They recognized the unseen barrier, a threshold even their fierce devotion wouldn't permit them to breach. The entrance, a jagged maw of obsidian-tinged branches, yawned open to a consuming blackness. Hesitation flickered, quelled by the promise etched onto her very being. She stepped into the gloom. Inside, a twisted warren of interconnected roots and putrescent flesh formed claustrophobic passages. The air was thick with cloying sweetness, the stink of decay struggling against a sharp, metallic tang. Her hand remained clenched around the cool silver of her dagger's hilt. The place throbbed with a perverse life, as if the very architecture were leeching off Ronan's torment. Guided by an instinct, a visceral pull toward the heart of the desolation, she navigated the labyrinth. At last, she reached a vast chamber. There, upon a throne sculpted from spiraling bone, sat Ronan. He was amplified, bloated with unnatural strength, his features honed to a predatory sharpness. His eyes, once hazel and welcoming, now blazed with walgam, malignant energy, mirrors reflecting the darkness that had devoured him. Lanky, unkempt strands framed a face scored with anguish. A silent battle eternally waged. He was apex predator incarnate, a shadow king ruling his private hell-cur. He offered no greeting, no movement, simply fixed her with that burning gaze, a silent gauntlet thrown, a warning issued. Ilara stood firm, refusing to show fear. "Ronan," she called, her voice reverberating in the cavernous space. "I'm here to help." A guttural rumble erupted from his chest, vibrations rattling through the stone floor. "Help?" he croaked, his voice a rasping blade against flint. "There is no salvation for me. Only oblivion awaits." "That's a lie," Ilara countered, taking a step closer. "The curse can be broken. I can shatter it." He laughed, a fractured, mirthless sound. "You? A wisp of a girl, imagining you can unravel what destiny itself has spun. You are a fool." "Destiny isn't a prison, Ronan," she argued, her voice unwavering. "It's a current. We choose whether to fight it, or be carried by it." He rose from his throne, a colossal figure of shadow and fury. "You know nothing of the undertow that grips me," he bellowed, his voice shaking the foundations. "It's a maelstrom of shadow, dragging me down, and I will not permit you to drown beside me." He advanced, each step measured, each movement imbued with raw power. Ilara stood her ground, unflinching. Beneath the monstrous facade, she glimpsed the man, a glimmer of pain in his eyes, a muted cry for deliverance. "Oh, I made a vow," she responded, her voice softening, tinged with empathy. I vowed I wouldn't abandon you. He halted mere inches away, his presence oppressive, his shadow engulfing her. Vows are meaningless whispers, he spat, his voice venomous, especially promises given to a monster. You're not a monster, Ilara insisted, reaching a hand toward him. He recoiled as though scorched, his eyes widening, a flash of something akin to terror within their depths. Don't, he snarled, his voice strained with repressed emotion. Don't touch me. You have no idea what you're doing. I do, Ilara replied, her hand still extended. I know you're suffering. I know you're afraid. But you're not alone. He winced, his control momentarily crumbling, the beast retreating to reveal the man within, a man drowning in despair. Alone, he breathed, the word a bare exhalation. That's all I am. All I deserve. That's false, Ilara repeated, her voice firm. You deserve freedom. He balled his hands into fists, knuckles bleached white, the battle raging inside him evident. Freedom? He scoffed. I am past redemption, beyond rescue. Flee this place. Forget you ever laid eyes on me. Save yourself. I can't, Ilara stated, her voice resolute. I won't. He lunged, seizing her wrist in a grip that threatened to shatter bone. Then you are a fool, he hissed, his face twisted with a cocktail of fury and despair. A beautiful, selfless fool. Flinging yourself into the abyss for a creature that doesn't warrant your light. Leave, before I give you ample reason to regret your misplaced pity. His grip intensified, a warning and a plea entwined. Ilara met his searing gaze, saw the torment, the self-hatred, the desperate yearning to be free from the darkness that held him captive. But she saw something else, too. A spark of hope, buried beneath layers of pain. I'm not scared of you, Ronan, she declared, her voice unwavering despite the excruciating pressure on her wrist. And I'm not leaving. He regarded her, his eyes searching, questioning, incredulous. Then, with a raw roar of frustration and anguish, he hurled her away, sending her sprawling against a wall of fossilized wood. Get out, he thundered, his voice echoing through the chamber. Get out, and never return. Ilara lay sprawled, winded but unbroken. She looked up at Ronan, a dominating figure of shadow and rage, his eyes ablaze with a pain that mirrored her own. She understood that she couldn't force him to accept deliverance. He had to choose, it himself. But she also knew that she wouldn't surrender. She wouldn't forsake him to the darkness. She would find a way to reach him, to breach the defenses he had erected around himself, to remind him of the man he once was, the man he still could be. She pushed herself upright, her gaze steady. I'll be back, Ronan, she said, her voice distinct and resolute, and I won't cease until I rescue you. Then she turned and departed, leaving Ronan solitary in his fortress of shadows, and Ilara facing the fight that had only just begun. A glimmer of humanity, Ilara faltered, a painful jolt shooting through her bruised ribs. She clutched her side, each breath a shallow rasp. Ronan's monstrous pronouncements, a cacophony of growls and supplications, haunted her mind. Leave me. You can't save me. I'm already gone. Yet, beneath the surface's brutality, she had sensed a fragile tremor, a vulnerable nerve exposed, a silent entreaty against oblivion. On the edge of the blighted clearing, she sank to her knees, the cloying stench of decay permeating the air. The stronghold, a serrated silhouette against the bruised indigo sky, throbbed with unholy power. It felt like a poisoned wound upon the land, radiating malignancy. Was she deluding herself, clinging to that faint ember of humanity? Was she chasing a shadow, a memory of Ronan's former self? She closed her eyes, recalling his face before the curses ravages the warmth that danced in his hazel depths, the gentle curve of his smile. It felt like grasping smoke. Still, she couldn't dismiss the certainty that he remained, entombed beneath layers of fury and anguish, battling a fate he believed sealed. Legends surfaced in her memory, whispered secrets from clandestine havens of healers and protectors. The Alpha, bound to primal darkness, could only be redeemed by his true mate. A connection so potent, it could shatter even the most formidable enchantment. She had dedicated her existence to preparing for this moment, poring over ancient texts, honing her abilities, fortifying her spirit. But no amount of preparation could have braced her for the sheer agony of Ronan's torment. The oppressive weight of the encroaching shadows. An unseen energy crackled as she fixed her gaze upon the stronghold. She couldn't abandon him. Not while even the faintest hope flickered. A short distance from the clearing, concealed behind a thorny lattice, Ilara discovered a shallow cave. It offered scant protection, a place to tend her injuries and replenish her resolve. The aches in her body were negligible compared to the hollowness in her heart. Days dissolved into nights. A silent guardian, Ilara observed Ronan from a distance, melting into the scenery. She watched him patrol the ramparts of his stronghold, a lone sentinel against the tempestuous heavens. At times, he would halt, his frame slumping, head bowed, as if crushed by existence's burden. Rarely, glimpsing moments revealed a flicker of the man he used to be, a hesitant hand almost reaching for a withered bloom, a gaze lingering upon the distant peaks. In those fleeting intervals, the monstrous mask faltered, revealing the captive soul within. One twilight, as the sun bled across the horizon in streaks of crimson and violet, Ilara witnessed Ronan leaving the stronghold. His movements were infused with restless energy, each step deliberate, his senses on high alert. He navigated towards the border of the blighted clearing, halting just before the untainted forest. He remained there, back toward her, posture unyielding. Ilara observed him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could practically feel the darkness emanating from him, a tangible force threatening to consume all it touched. But she detected something else as well, a profound reservoir of sorrow, an aching solitude that mirrored the echoes within her own soul. Ronan lifted his head, his face turned towards the heavens. A guttural growl vibrated in his chest, a testament to pain and defiance. She sought his fist clench, knuckles bone white. He was fighting, she realized. He struggled against the darkness even as it claimed him. Caution was paramount. Any misstep could plunge him, irretrievably, into the abyss. Yet she couldn't stand idly by as he destroyed himself. She had journeyed too far, sacrificed too much, to surrender now. As night enveloped the land, Ilara cautiously approached the clearing's edge, her footfalls muted on the mossy floor. She halted a safe distance from Ronan, her voice a gentle whisper on the breeze. "Ronan?" He stiffened, his body rigid. He remained facing away. "Leave me be," he rumbled, his tone a clear warning. "I told you to go." "I can't," Ilara insisted, her voice resolute despite the tremor in her hands. "I won't." Ronan finally turned, his eyes blazing with an unnatural light, his face contorted in a mask of fury, warped by the curse. You believe you can redeem me? He snarled. You think your affection can shatter this? You're a fool, little one. I don't know, Ilara admitted, her voice soft. But I must attempt to. Ronan let out a laugh, a hollow, joyless sound that sent icy tendrils down her spine. Attempt. All you will manage is your own demise. This darkness will devour you, just as it did me. Then I'll meet it with you, Ilara declared, taking a step closer. I hold no fear. Ronan recoiled, his expression shifting from rage to something resembling dread. Stay back from me, he warned, his voice now laced with desperation. I don't desire to harm you. You won't, Ilara assured, stopping a few feet away. She met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. I am aware you remain within, Ronan. I perceive it in your gaze. I discern it in your voice. For a heartbeat, a mere sliver of time, the monstrous guise crumbled. The darkness eased, and she beheld a flash of the man she once knew. The man she loved. His eyes swam with sorrow, regret, and a desperate, unspoken plea for deliverance. Then, with alarming speed, the darkness surged back, engulfing him anew. He snarled, his body convulsing, his eyes radiating malevolent power. Get away, he roared, his voice a guttural sound that reverberated through the clearing. Escape before it seizes you. Ilara stood her ground. Her heart ached with sorrow. She knew she couldn't reach him tonight. The darkness was too potent, the curse had taken too deep a hold. But she wouldn't yield. She would continue fighting, continue believing, until she discovered a way to break the enchantment and retrieve Ronan from the brink. I'll be present, she said, her voice barely audible. I'll remain until you are ready. She pivoted and departed, leaving Ronan alone in the encroaching darkness. She was aware the path ahead would be arduous and long, fraught with peril and sorrow. The wilderness within him mirrored her own resolve. Yet she also knew she couldn't forsake him. She represented his single sliver of hope, his solitary prospect for redemption, and she would undertake whatever action was necessary to redeem him, even if it necessitated sacrificing herself in the endeavor. Secrets of the curse, each breath sent spikes of pain through Ilara's ribs, a constant, throbbing testament to Ronan's volatile strength. She perched on the edge of her cot, the coarse blanket a minor irritant against her skin. Weak sunlight bled through the gaps in the room's wood planking, hardly piercing the gloom that clung to the packlands, a gloom mirrored in her own spirits. Ronan remained an enigma. His gaze shuddered, his words laced with acid. Yet she'd glimpsed a fragile hope beneath the surface, a silent scream trapped within the beast. Understanding him was imperative. She had to find a key. Rising, she ignored the sharp complaint in her side and sought out Lyra. The beta patrolled the perimeter of the training grounds, vigilant and hawk-eyed. Ilara approached with caution, aware of the other woman's deep-seated suspicion. Lyra, she began, her voice low but resolute. I need to speak with the Elder Council. Lyra halted, her face a mask. The council is not to be trifled with, occupied as they are with weighty matters. This concerns Ronan, Ilara insisted, meeting her stare head-on. It concerns the ancestral blight. A flicker, perhaps worry, perhaps simply acceptance touched Lyra's features. That ancient malady is a wound best left undisturbed, to scab over in time. It isn't healing, Ilara retorted, her tone sharpening. It's festering, poisoning everything. Ronan is in torment, and his fall will drag us all down. Lyra remained silent for a long beat, then exhaled, the sound steeped in resignation. Very well. I will escort you. But expect no easy answers, no readily shared lore. The elders occupied a sequestered copse, a haven of venerable trees and murmuring breezes. Their faces, mapped with the experience of ages, held eyes that had witnessed too much. They sat encircling a wizened oak, its boughs reaching upward like beseeching arms. Lyra gave a clipped nod and retreated, leaving Ilara to face the council's collective scrutiny alone. The elder with eyes like polished obsidian spoke first, her voice a dry rustle. You seek knowledge of the blood curse, child? I do, Ilara responded, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. I need to know its origins, how to sever its hold. A silent exchange passed between the elders, a wordless colloquy. Finally, another, a man crowned with snow-white hair, spoke. The telling is long, steeped in tragedy. Are you prepared to listen? Ilara nodded, her pulse hammering. I am, the elder began, his voice a sonorous drone that seemed to vibrate through the ancient grove. Long before Ronan's line claimed the alpha mantle, there reigned another, Farron, a leader of strength and integrity, beloved by his pack, respected by his rivals. He paused, his gaze unfocused, lost in the echoes of the past. Theron had a mate, Isolde. Their love burned with fierce intensity. But Isolde attracted the attention of another, a sorcerer named Mordred, banished for dabbling in forbidden arts. A prickle of dread crawled across Ilara's skin, an unwelcome portent. Consumed by envy and desire, Mordred sought to claim Isolde for himself. He offered Theron power, unimaginable strength, in exchange for her fealty. Theron, of course, refused outright. The elder's voice hardened, a flash of ancient anger in his eyes. Spurned and incandescent with rage, Mordred unleashed his vengeance. He cursed Theron, corrupting his very soul, warping him into a creature of shadow and fury. Yet the curse remained incomplete. It demanded a sacrifice, a freely offered devotion. Ilara's breath snagged. Isolde? The elder nodded, his face grim. Isolde, witnessing the agony of her beloved, offered herself to Mordred. She believed her sacrifice would break the curse, would redeem Theron. But Mordred was a liar. He seized Isolde, and with her stolen life force, he completed the curse, binding it to Theron's lineage, to be inherited through generations. The narrative hung in the air, a grim tableau of betrayal, sacrifice, and perverted affection. Ilara struggled to process the weight of it all, the profound tragedy of Roden's heritage. But the woman with obsidian eyes interjected, her voice a mere thread of sound. There exists a spark of hope, a secret woven into the very fabric of the curse. Ilara leaned forward, a flicker of anticipation igniting within her. What is it? Mordred, in his hubris, believed he had forged an unbreakable, absolute curse. But he overlooked one critical element. The curse draws its power from Isolde's sacrifice, from her love for Theron. And love, true love, is a force impervious to absolute corruption. The woman paused, her gaze piercing. The curse can only be shattered by a love that mirrors Isolde's, a love willing to relinquish everything, even itself, for the sake of the afflicted. A surge of hope coursed through Ilara, a nascent flame in the darkness. So, redemption is possible? Possible, the elder confirmed, but far from simple. Mordred layered the curse with protections, illusions, temptations. The path to its undoing bristles with peril, and the cursed one himself may resist, seduced by the power and the oblivion the darkness offers. Ilara thought of Ronan, the rage and despair warring in his gaze. She knew he would fight her, push her away with brutal force, but she also knew that somewhere beneath the monster, a man still existed, a man worth the fight. "There is one more matter," the man with snow-white hair stated, his tone somber. "The curse is tethered to a relic, a physical embodiment of Mordred's dark power. It lies hidden somewhere within these lands, in a place of utter despair. Destroy the relic, and the curse will weaken, making it far easier to break." "Do you know its location?" Ilara asked, her voice barely a whisper, charged with anticipation. The elders exchanged another silent look. "We harbor suspicions," the old woman replied, "but the route to it is guarded by phantoms and deceit. Discovery will be difficult, destruction even more so." Ilara rose, her legs unsteady, but her resolve steely. "I will find it. I will break this curse, regardless of the cost." She turned to leave, the weight of the elder's revelation pressing heavily upon her. As she departed, she heard the old woman's voice, a breath carried on the wind. "Be wary, child. The darkness is seductive. Do not allow it to consume you." Ilara hesitated, a shiver tracing its path down her spine. She understood the danger. She understood the risks involved. But she also understood that retreat was no longer an option. Ronan was depending on her, unknowingly, and she would not let him succumb. The wilderness beckoned, a chorus of whispering, leaves and unseen denizens, mirroring the untamed wilderness within Ronan, the savage heart she was destined to reclaim. The elder's tale reverberated in her mind, not as a burden, but as a map, a terrifying, crucial guide into the very heart of the blood curse. Divided loyalties, a palpable unease clung to the air as Ilara moved further into pack territory. It wasn't the outright aggression she anticipated, but a disquieting, observant stillness. From beneath the boughs of ancient trees, from the fringes of glades where wolves rested with deceptive indolence, eyes tracked her every move. She felt their silent interrogation, their apprehension, dread, a pressure as tangible as stone. They were judging her, weighing her against the revered stories of the true mate, against the monstrosity their alpha had become. She paused near a babbling brook, its melody a fleeting comfort. A young Shisha wolf, practically a pup, approached with hesitant steps. Her coat resembled the hues of fallen leaves, her eyes filled with youthful trepidation. "You're Ilara, the healer, yes?" she breathed, her voice a fragile sound. Ilara knelt, meeting the girl's gaze. "I am. And you are?" "Leah." They whisper you might be able to mend him." The last words caught in her throat, a mixture of fervent hope and stark incredulity. "Leah, I promise you that much." Leah's gaze darted to the dense thicket bordering them, then back to Ilara. "Be wary. He's not the same anymore. The cursed's devouring him from the inside." She shuddered. Despite the sunlight filtering warmly through the canopy, he isolates himself. He craves solitude with his torment. But that's not what you want for him. A solitary tear carved a path down Leah's cheek. "No, we need him. We're losing our way too, adrift without his guidance. The Paka, it's splintering." She glanced at her fidgeting hands, twisting them in distress. Some of the elders suggest it's kinder to let him succumb, to seek a new alpha, one unmarred by the darkness. Ilara's heart constricted with empathy. "But you reject that notion." Leah shook her head vehemently. "No, he's still in there, I know it. Sometimes, when his gaze falls upon us, there's a spark, a flicker of recognition." She reached out, her small hand engulfing Ilara's. "Please, heal him. Save us all." The gravity of Leah's supplication settled on Ilara like a heavy cloak, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. This transcended Ronan's well-being. It concerned the entire pack, their very existence teetering on a precipice. As Leah melted back into the woods, Ilara sensed a looming presence. Lyra. The beta's expression was unreadable, her eyes like sharpened obsidian. "What did you impart to her?" Lyra questioned, her tone clipped and hard. "Simply that I intend to aid Ronan," Ilara responded, meeting Lyra's scrutiny unflinchingly. Lyra scoffed, a dry, mirthless sound. "Aid? You presume to aid a creature so afflicted. You possess no comprehension of the forces at play. He poses a threat to himself, to every soul around him." "I'm aware of the danger he represents," Ilara said quietly. "But I also believe a glimmer of good persists within him. I've witnessed it." Lyra advanced, her voice reduced to a low, ominous rumble. "You're deluded by some naive concept of destiny, some fanciful illusion. He's no prince trapped in beast form waiting to be awakened. He's a monster, plain and simple. And you're treading a perilous path." "I appreciate your worry, Lyra. Your devotion to him, to the pack, is clear." "Devotion?" "He strains that devotion to its breaking point each day. He seals himself off, disregards our wisdom, relinquishes control further to the beast residing inside." Lyra pivoted away, pacing with barely suppressed agitation. "I have served him faithfully for countless years. I have shielded him, defended him, even when he fought against it. But I'm nearing my limit, witnessing him dismantle everything we've strived to achieve." Her voice faltered, revealing a flicker of raw emotion that she swiftly masked. Ilara approached, placing a hand gently on Lyra's arm. "He needs you, Lyra. He needs your fortitude, your fidelity. But he requires someone to maintain belief in him, even when his own wavers." Lyra recoiled as if burned, shaking off the touch. "Don't presume to fathom his needs. Your interactions have been fleeting. You haven't glimpsed the abyss that consumes him." "Then illuminate it for me," Ilara countered. "Show me the depths of his suffering, the extent of the curse's hold. Help me understand the true nature of what I face." Lyra scrutinized her, her features a complex tapestry of distrust and something bordering on grudging admiration. "Why? What compels you to risk everything for him, for a monster so thoroughly corrupted?" Ilara paused, carefully selecting her words. Because I hold faith in his potential redemption, and because I fear that if he succumbs, the darkness will engulf us all." Lyra remained mute for a long moment, her gaze riveted on the churning stream. The forest held its breath, awaiting her pronouncement. At last she spoke, her tone almost inaudible. "There's a place an ancient training ground, nestled deep within the woods. He retreats there when the curse intensifies. He inflicts pain upon himself." Ilara's heart clenched with sympathetic anguish. "Take me to him there." Lyra shook her head, her refusal adamant. "I cannot. He'd slay me without hesitation. He has forbidden anyone from approaching him during those episodes. And then guide me there. Describe the route. Provide me with some landmark to follow." Lyra hesitated again, torn between her allegiance to Ronan and her burgeoning desperation to salvage him, to protect the pack. The weight of her impossible choice was palpable. She finally conceded, her voice low and urgent. Proceed north, beyond the whispering pines. Trace the creek until it splits. Take the left-hand path, the one overrun with thorny vines. It leads to a clearing, ringed by craggy rocks. You'll recognize it instantly. But, Ilara, she paused, her eyes pleading silently. Exercise caution. He won't anticipate your arrival. He won't be governed by reason. He'll be a feral beast. I understand, Ilara affirmed, her voice unwavering. Thank you, Lyra. Lyra turned sharply, fading back into the shadows, leaving Ilara alone with her thoughts and the daunting challenge ahead. The wilderness seemed to close in around her, a persistent reminder of the peril that awaited, of the untamed nature within Ronan that she desperately hoped to subdue. She recognized that her decisions from this point forward would not only dictate Ronan's destiny, but also her own, and the fate of the pack. Shared dream sleep proved elusive, dragging Ilara under with a grudging current. Lyra's dire pronouncements, coupled with the palpable agony emanating from Ronan, clung like grave clothes. She thrashed on the crude bed of firs, the woodsy tang of pine and musty earth offering scant consolation. Phantasms danced behind her closed eyes, Ronan's bestial snarl bleeding into glimpses of profound vulnerability, the pack's terrified visages, Leah's pleading gaze. A maelstrom of despair threatened to submerge her entirely. As consciousness began to ebb, the fractured images fused, spiraling into a shadowy abyss. Then, quiet. A sun-drenched glade stretched before her, bathed in the mellow glow of twilight. Wild blossoms swayed in the soft zephyr, a riot of color against the emerald expanse. A brook gurgled with cheerful music as it snaked through the tall grasses. The air vibrated with the drowsy buzz of bees and the intoxicating fragrance of jasmine. It was a far cry from the raw, unyielding wilderness encompassing Ronan's territory, a sanctuary of pristine beauty that felt unsettlingly familiar. A boy, small and slight, sat by the murmuring water, his back presented to her. A thicket of raven hair caught the sun's reflection. He meticulously fashioned a small boat from bark and saplings, his young brow creased in concentration. An irresistible pull drew Ilara forward, a sense of recognition resonating deep within. Approaching, she observed the careful detail he lavished on his creation. Minuscule sails of dried leaves, a rudder whittled from a splinter of wood. It was a heartfelt endeavor, wrought with an artistry that belied his tender years. Suddenly, peals of girlish laughter echoed through the meadow. A vision of effervescent youth materialized, her long burnished hair flowing freely, her eyes alight with playful sparks. She dashed towards the boy, their feet splashing through the brook, sending droplets arcing into the golden light. "Ronan! Ronan! Look what I found!" she cried, brandishing a clutch of vibrant polished stones. Ronan glanced up, his face blossoming into a wide, untainted smile. A smile Ilara had never witnessed, untainted by the torment that defined his current existence. A glimpse into a life she could scarcely fathom. "They're beautiful, Anne," he responded, his voice clear and devoid of the harsh rasp she associated with him. He accepted the offerings, examining each with childlike wonder. "We can decorate the boat with them." United, they embellished the tiny craft with the colorful gems, their laughter mingling with the brook's gentle music. They set the boat afloat, watching with rapt attention as it drifted downstream, carrying their youthful hopes and dreams. Ilara stood spellbound, an observer to this unfolding scene. A recovered memory, a shard of Rodin's history, a testament to the innocence and joy that had once graced his life. A jarring contrast to the haunted figure he had become, a poignant reminder of the curse's devastating reach. A wave of despair washed over her, interwoven with a fierce resolve to reclaim the man concealed beneath the surface. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the meadow, the vision began to dissipate. The cheerful sound subsided, the vibrant colors faded, and the idyllic landscape dissolved into a swirling haze. Ilara stretched out a hand, desperately attempting to grasp the memory, but it slipped away like grains of sand. She awoke with a sharp intake of breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dream lingered, a vivid tableau etched into her consciousness. The image of young Ronan, smiling and unburdened, burned within her memory. She sat up, shivering, the weight of his suffering pressing down. Yet, amidst the gloom, a spark of hope flickered to life. She had glimpsed the man he once was, the man he could be once more. The malediction had not fully eradicated his humanity, it had merely entombed it beneath layers of anguish and shadows. And Ilara understood, with unwavering conviction, that she was destined to liberate him. She rose from her makeshift bed, her determination strengthened. The shared dream had offered a profound insight into Ronan's torment, a peek into the light he had lost. It had bolstered her belief in their connection, their shared destiny. She would not falter in the face of his monstrous aspect, his cutting words, or his attempts to repel her. She would fight for him, for the man she knew remained within, awaiting rescue. The wilderness surrounding her dwelling seemed less intimidating now, the shadows less menacing. The air possessed a sharper quality, imbued with purpose. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but fear no longer held her captive. She had seen the light within Ronan, and she would not rest until she guided him back to it. Before venturing out, Ilara knelt before the small fire, replenishing it with fresh kindling. As the flames snapped and swayed, she breathed a silent promise, a vow to the man who haunted her thoughts. "I will find you, Ronan. I will bring you home." The fire seemed to respond, its heat enfolding her, a silent pledge of her unwavering commitment. She stepped into the morning mist, prepared to confront whatever trials lay ahead, her heart brimming with a love that defied the darkness. She would not permit his choices to dictate his fate, not when she knew the radiance he held within. This was her dawn, and she prayed it could be his as well. Unrest within the pack, the residue of Ronan's history clung to Ilara as she awoke. Ain's mirth, a phantom echo, only amplified the grimness of Ronan's current state. She rose, the rough blanket a minor irritation against her skin, the fading dream her only armor against the day. In the pack house, tension hung heavy, a silent accusation. Eyes, prisms of curiosity, distrust, and animosity tracked her movements. A palpable disquiet permeated the air, a biting undercurrent to the familiar sense of hearth smoke and damp fur. Lyra waylaid her near the fire pit, her face a rigid mask of disapproval. "You're unsettling things, girl," she hissed. This pack knew a semblance of peace. Now whispers, doubts are rife. Ronan is challenging enough without this. Ilara met her flinty gaze. "I'm not here to cause chaos, only to aid Ronan." Lyra's scoff was brittle. "Aid? He's rejected it. And what makes you believe you, a mere outsider, can accomplish what generations couldn't?" Her voice resonated with bone-deep weariness. "I saw him," Ilara countered softly, the dream's afterglow warming her. "I saw him as he should be, before the curse. He deserves a chance at that." Lyra's eyes narrowed to slits. "Dreams are fanciful lies, child. Don't mistake them for reality." With a defeated slump of her shoulders, She turned away. Leave him be, for your own good and ours. From the shadows of the doorway, Caspian observed them, his expression an enigma. He radiated controlled power, his movements like a predator's, languid, yet ready. His sable eyes lingered on Ilara before sliding to Ronan's shut door. A slow, sinister smile bloomed on his face. He sauntered toward a cluster of younger pack members near the training grounds. Energy thrummed off them, a palpable craving for status and authority. "Our alpha is waning," Caspian murmured, his voice carrying with deceptive ease. "The curse, it's devouring him. He can barely manage a shift." Garrick, a brawny young wolf, spoke up. "He's still the alpha." "We're sworn to him." Caspian's smile widened, exposing predatory incisors. "Loyalty is earned, not blindly pledged. What has Ronan offered us lately? He's a recluse, swallowed by his private darkness. He gives us nothing." He paused, letting his words fester. "But imagine, an alpha of strength, one who leads us to new hunting grounds, to glory. An alpha who isn't afraid to seize what he desires." He cast a glance toward the pack house, where Ilara had disappeared. "And now, this slip of a human girl arrives, stirring the pot, further distracting him. Is this what we want? A feeble alpha, led by sentiment?" Unease flickered across their faces. The seed of discontent had been carefully planted. Inside, Ilara discovered Ronan in his customary gloom, consumed by his inner demons. He was a silhouette against the window, gazing at the forest, his back a rigid wall. A palpable force simmered around him, the caged wrath of the wolf, straining for release. "Ronan," she ventured, approaching with caution. He remained still. "Leave me be, Ilara." His voice was a gravelly rumble, laced with torment. "I dreamt," she pressed on. "I saw you, with Ain." His spine stiffened. "Don't utter her name." "She was radiant," Ilara persisted, undeterred. "You were radiant. You deserve that lightness again." He finally turned, his eyes twin infernos of agony and fury. "Radiance? Gone, a lifetime ago, another existence. I am what I am now, a monster." "You're not a monster," Ilara insisted, her voice unwavering. "You're cursed. It doesn't define you." A harsh, joyless sound escaped his lips, a mockery of laughter. "Doesn't it? This cursed's in my marrow, Ilara. Part of me. I feel it writhing, remaking me. I relish the kill now. The power." Ilara took a step forward, offering her hand. "Then wrestle it. Don't let it win." He recoiled from her touch, his eyes haunted. "You don't comprehend. It's too potent. It will annihilate you as well if you linger near." "I'm not afraid," Ilara declared, her tone resolute. "You should be," he breathed, his gaze beseeching. "For your own sake, Ilara, flee. Flee far from me." The pack's unease continued to escalate. Doubts concerning Ronan's authority spread like a contagion, subtly encouraged by Caspian's manipulations. Whispers morphed into outright clashes, loyalty splitting along fault lines of ambition and apprehension. Some cleaved steadfastly to Ronan, recalling his past strength and compassion. Others, seduced by Caspian's allure, saw a path to ascendancy, a power they'd never dared to envision. Garrick, now emboldened by Caspian, confronted Ilara later that day. "You need to go," he spat, his tone aggressive. "You're exacerbating matters. Ronan is losing his grip, and it's on your head." Ilara stood firm. "I'm not leaving. I believe in him. Belief won't salvage him, Garrick sneered, or us. He's a menace to all. He advanced, his eyes narrowing to slits. Perhaps you're the problem. Perhaps you're conspiring with Caspian. That's a lie, Elara retorted, but the seed of suspicion had found fertile ground. She saw the wavering in Garrick's eyes, the pervasive uncertainty gripping the pack. The internal discord mirrored the tempest raging within Ronan. The curse throbbed inside him, a dark swell threatening to engulf the last embers of his humanity. He retreated further inward, isolating himself not only from the pack and Elara, but from any flicker of hope. He chose the shadows, embraced the darkness, convinced it was his destiny. But in the abyss of his despair, a faint echo of Ane's laughter still resonated, a cruel reminder of what he had forfeited and could never reclaim. A decision, eternally made, that anchored him to the curse, and to the woman, unwavering in her resolve to break it. The rival pack's attack, a tormented bellow, raw with agony and fury, shattered the pre-dawn quiet. This wasn't merely Ronan's usual pained sound, a feral undercurrent. A sense of something unleashed vibrated within it. Elara vaulted from her pallet in the pack-house corner, instinctively grabbing the silver-plated knife from beneath her pillow. The air thrummed with primal energy, thick with the coppery tang of blood and the acrid scent of fear. Mayhem erupted outside. Cries, guttural snarls, and the sickening impact of bodies echoed through the chill air. Lyra charged into the room, her face a mask of grim resolve. "They're here, Caspian's pack. An attack." Her words were sharp, urgent. "Ronan, huh?" She trailed off, casting a glance filled with both pity and a simmering resentment at Ronan's closed chamber. He's compromised. Elara understood. The curse was taking hold, leaving him vulnerable. Caspian, ever the predator, had chosen this moment to strike. "I'll defend him," Elara asserted, her voice unwavering. Lyra's expression softened marginally, though skepticism remained. "You? Against an entire pack?" "I swore an oath," Elara countered, her gaze hardening. "And I intend to honor it." She brushed past Lyra and flung open Ronan's door. The interior was a whirlwind of shadows and barely restrained wrath. Ronan stood centered, body coiled tight, eyes blazing with an unnatural crimson intensity. Transformation was well underway, claws extended, fangs bared. He resembled less an alpha, more a trapped beast desperate to escape. He stank of ozone and unbridled force, the air around him shimmering with volatile energy. "Ronan, it's me, Elara," she soothed, her voice steady despite the tremor in her core. She advanced, and he snarled, the sound vibrating through her. "Keep away," he rasped, his voice a distorted echo. "You shouldn't see me like this." "I've witnessed your depths," Elara retorted, refusing to yield. "This doesn't frighten me." Without warning, a wolf crashed through the window, landing heavily within the room. It was Caspian, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. "Look who's come to play guardian," he scoffed, his gaze flitting between Elara and Ronan. "Pathetic, both weakened. Ronan, unable even to master his own curse, and you," he sneered, turning his gaze on Elara, "a mere innocent playing savior to a monster." Ronan exploded forward, a blur of fur and rage. But Caspian anticipated the move. He sidestepped the assault and raked claws across Ronan's flank, eliciting a sharp cry of pain. "Ronan!" Elara cried, her protective instincts surging. She surged between them, drawing her silver knife. "If you desire him, You'll have to come through me. Caspian's cruel laughter echoed. So be it. He lunged, claws extended, seeking to shred her. Elara possessed speed, agility. She evaded his initial onslaught and retaliated with a sharp kick to his jaw. Caspian stumbled backward, surprised by her strength. She moved with lithe precision, a deadly ballet born of years' training. Each move crafted to inflict maximum injury. She knew she lacked brute strength, so she would use his arrogance against him. The battle spilled outwards, from Ronan's chamber and into the pack-house main hall. Pack members were locked in brutal combat with Caspian's wolves, the air saturated with the sense of spilled blood and sharp adrenaline. Elara fought with a ferocity that astounded even herself. She became a whirlwind, parrying strikes, delivering blows, shielding Ronan, who now slumped against a wall, battling the curse's relentless pull. He watched her fight, his eyes awash with confusion and something akin to gratitude. Lyra entered the fray, her gaze burning with freshly found determination. She fought with honed skill, her years of experience as a warrior revealed. One by one, Caspian's wolves fell, their bodies broken, their spirits crushed. For Ronan, Lyra screamed, her voice cutting through the cacophony. For the pack, her defiance seemed to inspire the others. They fought with renewed passion, their loyalty to Ronan, and now to Elara, a blazing inferno. They fought for their alpha, and for their haven, for their very existence. The tide began to shift. Caspian, watching his advantage dissolve, roared in furious frustration. He broke away from Elara and lunged toward Ronan again. "This ends now," he snarled, raising his claws to strike the final blow. Before he could reach Ronan, Elara intercepted him. She tackled him to the floor, pinning him beneath her. She raised her silver knife, hand trembling slightly. She gazed down at Caspian, his eyes wide with rising panic. "You underestimated us," she stated, her voice devoid of warmth. "You underestimated our commitment. You underestimated my love for him." She plunged the blade into his shoulder. Caspian's scream echoed. His wolves, seeing their leader defeated, began to flee. The fight had ended. Caspian's pack destroyed. Silence descended upon the battered pack-house, broken only by ragged breaths and whimpers of the injured. Elara rose, body bruised and aching, yet her spirit unbroken. She surveyed the pack, their faces showing exhaustion and relief. They returned her gaze with a newfound respect. She had proven her strength. She had defended their alpha, their home. She turned to Ronan, now fully transformed, his eyes still glowing red, but with a glimmer of awareness returning. He met her gaze, his expression a mystery. He moved towards her, and she tensed, unsure what to expect. "Thank you," he rumbled, his voice a low growl. "You redeemed me." Elara's heart soared. It was the first time he had truly seen her, the first time he had expressed any thanks. It was a minor win, but a victory nonetheless. "I promised," she whispered, her voice soft. "I'm here to save you, Ronan, even from yourself." She extended her hand, her fingers brushing against his fur. He recoiled slightly, but didn't retreat. Dawn's first light pierced the storm clouds, bathing the area in a fragile golden brilliance. The pack-house, once a battlefield, now stood bathed in a tentative, hopeful glow. The immediate fight was over, but the war remained. Elara knew the curse persisted, and that Caspian would return. But at this moment, they had endured. And within that survival, a shimmer of hope remained. Hope for Ronan, hope for the pack, and hope for a destiny where love could triumph over even the darkest curse. Witnessing the beast, the atmosphere vibrated, a residue of power unrelated to magic, something raw and fundamental. Earthy scents mingled with sharp ozone, battling against a wave of rank, animalistic reek that assaulted Ilara's senses. Ronan's transformation accelerated beyond anything she'd witnessed. Gone was the mere flash of gold in his irises or the subtle elongation of his teeth. This was utter surrender. Bones groaned and snapped, a cacophony muffled by a bestial roar that tore from his depths. Muscles swelled, ripping cloth asunder. His spine contorted, forcing him down until his human shape dissolved into a living nightmare. Ilara remained rooted, not paralyzed by fear, but gripped by an almost morbid fascination. This wasn't the Ronan she knew, the man battling inner demons, the alpha burdened by his pack's needs. This was the curse incarnate. Ebon fur exploded across his flesh like a rising tide of darkness. His face stretched into a snout, lined with obsidian teeth. His eyes, once pools of haunted gold, blazed with an infernal scarlet light. Around her, the pack scattered, whimpering. Even the stalwart Lyra recoiled, hand flying towards her knife hilt. Caspian's scattered forces were forgotten in the face of this abomination. He groaned, clutching a broken arm, his eyes mirroring a different torment, the chilling awareness that he had unleashed a force beyond his control. Transformed, the beast that was once Ronan towered over every wolf Ilara had ever encountered. A grotesque mockery of nature, warped by sinister arts. Shadowy tendrils coiled around him, solidifying the impression of the curse-given form. He radiated power, but it was a tainted power, a destructive tide poised to engulf everything. His head swiveled, crimson eyes fixating on Ilara. A deep rumble emanated from his chest, shaking the ground beneath her feet. Not a sound of recognition, but of ravenous hunger, a savage compulsion to dominate and annihilate. In that instant, she knew Ronan was lost, only the beast remained. A wave of sickness rolled over her, a brew of horror and heartbreak. This was the monster of whispered legends, the creature Ronan had fought against, the fate he'd striven to avert. And she was a witness. Yet she didn't flee. She stood firm. Lyra yanked her arm, pulling her back. "Ilara, we have to escape. He's lost to it." Ilara shook her head, her gaze locked on the creature. "No, I won't abandon him." "He'll kill you," Lyra pleaded, desperation coloring her voice. "Perhaps," Ilara whispered, "but I must try." Madness, she knew. Every survival instinct screamed for her to run, but something deeper, stronger than terror, kept her rooted. The memory of Ronan's compassion, the fleeting glimpses of vulnerability, the spark of humanity she had perceived beneath the surface. It was the vow she'd made to herself, to him, to shatter the curse and restore what he'd lost. The beast lumbered forward, each massive pawfall pulverizing the earth. Saliva dripped from its fangs, the air thick with the stench of bloodlust. She could feel the heat radiating from its form, the raw, untamed energy that threatened to overwhelm her. She inhaled deeply, striving to calm her racing pulse. She possessed no weapon, no magic, only her will, and her bond with Ronan. "Ronan," she called, her voice trembling yet resolute. "It's me, Ilara. Can you hear me?" The beast paused, tilting its head, and for a heartbeat she detected a flicker of recognition in those hellish eyes. Then the moment vanished, replaced by a snarl that revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Ronan, I know you're in there," she persisted, her voice gaining strength. "Fight it. Don't let the curse consume you." She extended her hand, slowly, cautiously, toward the transformed wolf. Lyra gasped, attempting to drag her away, but Ilara stood her ground. "Remember who you are," she implored, her voice thick with emotion. "Remember your pack, your duty. Remember me." The beast stilled again, muscles coiled tight. It fixed on her hand, nostrils flaring as it inhaled her scent. Ilara felt the weight of its gaze, the internal battle raging within. Then, with breathtaking speed, it lunged. Ilara didn't move. She shut her eyes, bracing for impact, for the inevitable agony. But it never came. Instead, she felt scalding breath on her face, and a low, mournful whimper that seemed to tear through her very soul. She opened her eyes to see the beast inches away, its massive head lowered, its crimson eyes filled with anguish. A fleeting moment, a glimpse of the man trapped within. But it was enough. It was enough to ignite hope. The fragile moment shattered. A sharp, agonizing howl ripped from the beast's throat, and it stumbled backward, body racked with convulsions. The crimson in its eyes intensified, burning with malignant energy. The curse was fighting back, reasserting its dominion. Ilara realized she had to act now, before Ronan was lost forever. But how? What could she possibly do against such a monstrous, overwhelming power? Her gaze darted around, seeking a solution. It landed on Caspian, still sprawled on the ground, his face a mask of pain and malice. He was the font of the curse, the one who had unleashed this darkness. A daring, perhaps suicidal idea sparked in her mind. A long shot, a desperate gamble. But it was her only hope. She faced the beast once more, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Ronan, I won't give up on you," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "I'm going to break this curse, even if it destroys me." With that, she whirled and sprinted toward Caspian, toward the heart of the darkness that had swallowed the man she loved. A moment of recognition, the air vibrated with a primal energy, thick with the reek of damp fur and untamed might. Lyra's scream, a fragile thread, was nearly devoured by the cacophony of gnashing teeth and guttural snarls. Ilara faltered, her ankle betraying her on the uneven ground. An oppressive shadow loomed. A wolf, eyes blazing with ravenous intent, surged forward. Resignation, cold and complete, washed over her. This was the end of the road. Every lesson, every hope, snuffed out in a single, brutal instant. But the blow never landed. A titan's bellow shattered the chaotic din. A dog-hurtling mass struck the rogue with devastating force, sending it cartwheeling. Ilara gasped, air seizing in her lungs. Ronan, or a monstrous perversion of him, stood sentinel. Saliva dripped from his immense jaws, claws fully extended, yet his stances spoke of protection. Lyra choked back a sob, tugging frantically at Ilara's sleeve. "He'll kill you! Run!" Ilara remained transfixed. Her gaze was locked on the creature before her, a living nightmare, a gruesome monument to the curse's potency. And yet, something felt different. He hadn't attacked. He'd defended her. The beast swiveled its massive head, those incandescent eyes fixing on Ilara. Now, they held more than simple animal rage. Deep within the crimson inferno, a spark flickered, a ghost of the Ronin she cherished. So brief, it was almost imagined. From the monster's throat, emanated a sound like torment incarnate, the cry of a soul ensnared and battling for release. Ilara took a hesitant step, ignoring Lyra's frantic pleas. "Ronan?" she breathed, her voice a mere tremor. "Is that really you?" A shudder racked the massive frame. The crimson in his eyes intensified, warring with that fragile glimmer of humanity. He was a battleground, his very essence in contention. A clawed hand rose, as if reaching, then recoiled as he buried his muzzle in his other shoulder with a sound of exquisite pain. Lyra pulled with renewed urgency. "Ilara, he's not there anymore. You have to get away." But Ilara was rooted to the spot, not when she had witnessed that flicker, that silent cry for deliverance. She extended a hand, hovering just shy of his snout. The air surrounding him thrummed with raw power, a palpable caution. "Ronan," she repeated, voice stronger. "I know you're in there. Fight it. Please, fight the curse." His muscles coiled, then relaxed. The crimson in his eyes surged, then receded, then flared anew, a terrifying ballet of inner conflict. He was striving. She felt it in her bones. In an instant, the crimson dissipated, replaced by a stark lucidity. For a heartbeat, she saw him, the Ronin of memory, the one who had shared laughter under moonlit skies, who had held her close and promised forever. His eyes, filled with a heart-rending anguish, pierced hers. A single tear, the color of pitch, traced a path down his furred cheek. "Help me," he croaked, the words wrenched from his very core, a whisper consumed by the wind and the surrounding tumult. Yet Ilara heard it, as clearly as a chime. Then, just as swiftly, that clarity vanished. The crimson returned, burning with renewed ferocity. The beast roared, a sound purely born of agony. He stumbled backward, shaking his head violently, as if trying to expel something clinging to his mind. He gazed at Ilara, but it was no longer Ronan who looked back. The monster had claimed him, the curse made manifest. And in those eyes, she saw not hatred, not hunger, but a profound dread, a primal fear of his transformation, of the horrors he was destined to commit. He wheeled around and bolted, disappearing into the tangled depths of the woods. His rampaging passage echoed through the trees, a grim reminder of the encroaching darkness. Lyra crumpled, her body racked with sobs. "It's hopeless," she gasped. "He's lost. Completely lost." Ilara knelt beside her, her heart aching with a dull pain. She had borne witness. She had felt it. The Ronin she loved remained imprisoned, buried beneath the layers of the curse, and he had begged for her aid. Rising, her jaw set with resolution. "No," she stated firmly. "He's not lost, and I refuse to abandon him." Lyra lifted her tear-streaked face. "What are you going to do?" Ilara looked towards the shadowed forest that had swallowed Ronan. "I'm going to find Caspian," she declared, "and I'm going to eradicate this curse, for good." Lyra's voice broke. "You truly believe you can simply stroll up to Caspian and negotiate? He thrives on this power, Ilara. He wants Ronan annihilated." An unyielding resolve hardened Ilara's gaze, surprising even her. "Then, negotiation is off the table. I'll strip that power from him. Ronan deserves his chance, Lyra, and I'll see Caspian burn before I let him." "Steal it!" Lyra gaped at her, a mixture of terror and awe swirling in her eyes. "You're mad," she whispered. A wan smile touched Ilara's lips. "Perhaps, but I'm his mate, and I made a promise I was meant to save him." The smile vanished. replaced by a flinty determination. Even if he fights me every step of the way. The atmosphere thrummed with a sinister energy, less a brewing storm, more a creeping plague. Ilara recognized it first as a crawl. Across her scalp, a sense of surveillance devoid of physical eyes, yet brimming with malevolent purpose. It felt like a tightening vise around the small clearing, the place where Ronan's transformation had occurred, where he'd rescued her. She recalled the azure blaze in his irises, a silenced entreaty swallowed by bestial fury. That fleeting vision, that shard of Ronan's soul, now steeled her spirit. Lyra's dire pronouncements echoed, depicting Caspian as an indomitable entity, forged from shadows and pitilessness. But panic was a debt Ilara couldn't afford. Caspian, she whispered, the name leaving a bitter taste. She was unsure how, but she sensed his proximity, perhaps not in person, but his influence, his wicked will, saturated the air. A voice, smooth as riverstone and dripping with sardonic amusement, reverberated within her skull. So, the little lamb wanders into the lion's den. Gutsy, I'll concede, reckless, without question. Ilara gasped, clutching her temples. Reveal yourself, she demanded, her voice wavering despite her efforts. Patience, fledgling. The stage is not yet set. I prefer to observe, to conduct. Consider me the weaver of woes. The voice was an internal invasion, a parasite, thriving on her dread. What do you want from me? Ilara pressed, forcing composure. She couldn't reveal her trepidation. Not now. A guttural chuckle resonated, sending icy tendrils down her spine. Want? Such a terrestrial inquiry. I possess all I covet. Ronan, notably. Such a potent being, shackled by such quaint ethics. A true waste. He can still be saved, Ilara shot back, her voice gaining resilience. I won't allow you to utterly pervert him. Oh, but he is perverted. The curse transcends mere metamorphosis, fledgling. It is a reflection, a mirror reflecting the darkness he's long concealed. The treachery he suffered, the agonies he bore, I merely amplified the existing strains. Caspian's voice oozed with cruel gratification. Ilara's mind faltered. Had Ronan always harbored this potential for evil? She envisioned the tender youth from her dream, the mirth in his gaze, the unwavering fealty he exuded. No, she refused to accept it. You're fabricating, she countered, desperation lacing her words. He is not inherently wicked. Am I? Observe closer, fledgling. Observe the pack. Witness the terror in their eyes, the animosity simmering below the surface. They hold him accountable for their suffering, for the tribulations they've endured, and with just cause. He failed them. He could not shield them. And now he's morphing into the very specter they dread. Ilara's gaze swept across the woods, the shadows appearing to thicken, to writhe with hidden malice. She could almost perceive the pack's combined anguish, their seething ire. It was a tangible essence, a fertile ground for despair. Soon they will rebel against him. They will clamor for a new leader, one who can safeguard them from the encroaching darkness. And when that day arrives, allow me to state, I shall be present to gather the wreckage. Caspian's voice was a velvety caress, promising ruin and desolation. You covet his domain, Ilara deduced, the realization striking her like a blow. You covet his strength. An astute fledgling. Precisely. Ronan's power, augmented by the curse, represents a formidable asset, an asset I intend to command, and with him broken, contorted, consumed by the abyss, It shall be mine for the seizing. A wave of nausea overwhelmed Ilara. Caspian wasn't merely an abstract evil. He was a hunting beast, circling, awaiting the opportune moment to pounce. He was manipulating everything, everyone, for his own deviant objectives. "I will thwart you," she vowed, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I will unearth a means to break the curse. I will redeem him." Caspian erupted with laughter, a bone-chilling sound that spiraled through the woods. "Redeem him? You genuinely believe you are capable? The curse surpasses a mere affliction, fledgling. It's an allegiance, a bond, and Ronan has sealed his doom." Abruptly, a searing agony tore through Ilara's cranium. She cried out, collapsing to her knees. Visions assaulted her. Ronan, twisting in torment, his eyes radiating an unearthly light, the pack, their visages contorted with fear and loathing. Caspian, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "A mere prelude of events," Caspian cooed, malice saturating his timbre. "I'm merely applying pressure," fledgling, diminishing his resolve, crushing his spirit. "Soon he will be nothing more than a construct, dancing to my will." Ilara gasped, her body shaking violently. She could feel Ronan's torment, his despair, as if it were her own. The connection between them, the bond she had so fervently believed in, was being warped, corrupted, weaponized against them both. "He is mine, fledgling, and Suni, you will belong to me as well." With a final surge of dark energy, Caspian severed the connection. Ilara crumpled to the earth, gasping for breath, her body racked with agony. Silence descended on the forest once more, but the silence was heavy, filled with dread. She pushed herself upright, her body throbbing, her mind reeling. Caspian's words resonated in her thoughts, depicting a somber and terrifying reality. He was far stronger than she had presupposed, more unyielding, more corrupt. And Ronan was fading. Ilara glanced towards the area Ronan had left, towards the epicenter of the cursed woods. She had to locate him. She had to get to him before Caspian's influence utterly devoured him. She had to shatter the mirrored curse and reveal to Ronan his true self. Yet, a chilling certainty established itself within her heart. She was running out of time, and the architect of woes was already setting the stage for their downfall. Sanctuary of peace, the air hummed with spent magic. A sharp, metallic tang stinging Ilara's senses. Her fingers, unsteady, followed the groove of the last rune carved into the ancient stone circle. It felt like grasping at straws a legend dismissed as mere fancy during her rigorous training. A haven, a sliver of tranquility rested from the earth's core, a space where the curse's hold might weaken. She could only hope it was sufficient. "Are you sure about this?" Ronan's voice, gritty and edged with a bone-deep chill, shattered the forest's stillness. He loomed at the circle's edge, his figure a dark silhouette against the sun-dappled woods. Caspian's influence thrummed within him, a constant, nauseating pulse. Ilara turned, her heart twisting at the sight of him. The Ronan she cherished, the one woven into her dreams, was buried beneath layers of fury and hopelessness, his pupils now reflecting a ghastly amber not his own. "It's our only shot," she replied, her tone unwavering despite the turmoil within. "A place where you can reclaim yourself, even if just for a little while." A mirthless snort escaped him. "You still cling to the idea of me? After all this?" He advanced, the ground frosting over with each step. "I've embraced it, Ilara. The might, The liberation, the abyss. She recoiled, yet stood firm. That's not you, Ronan. That's Caspian twisting you, exploiting your pain. She extended a hand, her fingertips hovering near his arm. Please, just to believe in me. He faltered, a fleeting spark of the man she knew momentarily illuminating his eyes. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, consumed by the encroaching shadows. With a sigh that grated like stone grinding against stone, he entered the circle. The air rippled, a visible curtain of energy enveloping them. Ilara studied his face, her breath caught in her throat. The amber faded, supplanted by a hint of his genuine deep blue. His shoulders, perpetually rigid, seemed to relax, however subtly. What is this? He murmured, his voice less gravelly, more human. A sanctuary, she reiterated, allowing a fragile tendril of hope to bloom. A place where the curse has less power, where Caspian can't reach you so easily. He surveyed their surroundings, his gaze sweeping over the moss-laden stones, the towering trees forming a protective vault overhead. It feels different. He lifted a hand, touching his cheek, as if astonished to find it still his own, almost serene. Ilara moved closer, finally making contact with his arm. His skin was icy, almost unnaturally so, but she held on tight. It is. Let it seep in, Ronan. Allow yourself to remember. They remained in hushed communion for an age, the only sounds the whisper of leaves and the distant trill of a bird. Ilara observed him, searching for any sign that the sanctuary was indeed working. Slowly, painstakingly, she witnessed the tension bleed from his face, the fury recede from his eyes. I remember the garden, he uttered, his voice barely audible. My mother's roses, she used to croon to them. Ilara's heart ached. She knew of his mother, of her violent demise, the event that had fractured Ronan's world and paved the way for the curse. Tell me about them, she urged gently. He began tentatively, then spoke with growing ease, his voice laced with a longing that pierced Ilara's spirit. He painted vivid pictures of the rose's colors, the intoxicating fragrance that permeated the air, the warmth of his mother's hand in his. He spoke of a time before the shadows, before the treachery, before the curse. As he recounted those memories, Ilara detected a subtle shift within the sanctuary. The air grew balmier, the sunlight more radiant. The oppressive weight that had been crushing her chest began to dissipate. She understood the sanctuary wasn't just shielding Ronan from the curse. It was amplifying his memories, his emotions, his very essence. But the sanctuary could not undo the devastation. Abruptly, Ronan ceased speaking, his face contorting in agony. He clutched his head, his knuckles bone white. No, stop it, he groaned. I can't remember. Ilara reached for him, her voice threaded with concern. Ronan, what is it? What's happening? He's here, he gasped, terror widening his eyes. Caspian, he's trying to batter it down. A wave of icy dread washed over Ilara. She had underestimated Caspian's power, his reach. The sanctuary was robust, but not impenetrable. Fight him, Ronan, she implored. Don't let him in. Ronan writhed, his body convulsing. He cried out, a sound of raw torment that reverberated through the woods. Ilara held him close, desperately trying to anchor him, to prevent him from being devoured by the darkness. I can't, he choked out, his voice heavy with despair. He's too strong. He knows my vulnerabilities. He knows my terrors. Ilara gazed into his eyes, witnessing the battle raging within. She saw the Ronin she loved, the one fighting for his soul, the one who still clung to a spark of hope. And she saw the fiend, the creature fueled by rage and hopelessness, the one that threatened to utterly consume him. "You're stronger than him, Ronin," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "You have to be. You have people who believe in you, people who need you." "There's no one left," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They're all gone. They've all betrayed me." "I'm here," Ilara said, her grip tightening on his arm. "I haven't betrayed you, and I never will." He searched her eyes, as if seeking validation in her words. And in that instant, Ilara knew she had to do more than offer empty solace. She had to demonstrate, had to prove to him that he wasn't alone. She leaned forward, her lips gently meeting his. It was a tentative caress, a delicate offering of hope and love. And as their lips touched, she poured all her vitality, all her faith, all her affection into him. The sanctuary throbbed with energy, the air around them shimmering intensely. Ronin gasped, his body relaxing fractionally. The amber in his gaze began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of his genuine blue. But the reprieve was ephemeral. A voice, frigid and mocking, echoed in their minds. "How touching," Caspian sneered. "But your pathetic sanctuary is merely a fleeting diversion. He is mine, Ilara. And soon, you will be too." The psychic assault intensified, a surge of pain crashing over them. The sanctuary wavered, its protective barrier weakening. Ilara realized they couldn't linger. Caspian was too potent, too close. She broke the kiss, her eyes brimming with a mixture of dread and resolve. "We have to leave," she urged, her voice trembling slightly. "He's breaking down the defenses." Ronin stared at her, his expression a blend of gratitude and despair. "It's futile, Ilara," he said. "I'm already lost." "No, you're not," she insisted, seizing his hand. "We're in this together, Ronin, and we're going to fight him. We're going to prevail." She pulled him to his feet, and together they exited the sanctuary, back into the bleak, unforgiving reality of the cursed world. The brief interlude of peace had ended, but the fragile connection they had forged remained, a burning ember against the encroaching gloom. Embracing the curse, the air fractured, not with a peal of thunder, but with the untamed force of Caspian's onslaught. Ilara felt the protective circle around the stone shutter, the ancient glyphs dimming, like embers struggling against encroaching night. The haven they'd sought, the fragile dawn in Ronin's gaze, threatened to be snuffed out. "They're here," she whispered, hand instinctively finding the cool comfort of her silver dagger. Ronin straightened, a monument of tension, jaw tight. The fleeting ghost of the man he'd been, the man she believed he could be again, vanished, replaced by a tormented mask. The wolf was ascendant, its suffocating presence filling the space. "Behind me," he rumbled, his voice a distorted echo. A section of the wards gave way, scattering shimmering fragments of light. Through the opening poured Caspian's pack, eyes ablaze with dark fervor, bodies warped by the same sorcery that gripped Ronin. They moved with unsettling speed, their growls reverberating off the ancient stones. Ilara knew they were hopelessly outmatched. The sanctuary had been a long shot, a desperate bid to sever the link between Ronin and Caspian. It had bought them time, precious hours of lucidity, yet it hadn't sufficed. "Ronin, we must leave," she pleaded, tugging at his sleeve. "This place is vulnerable." He remained rooted, his gaze fixed on the approaching figures, his breath ragged. The inner battle raged visibly, a storm behind his eyes. She witnessed the agonizing conflict, the raw need to defend his territory, his people, colliding with the faint spark of his former self, the part that recognized her, that yearned for release. Caspian's voice, a poisoned caress, seeped into their minds. "Look at her, Ronan. The little lamb you've led into the den. You cannot shield her and your pack. Choose. Save her, and your people are doomed. Embrace the darkness and obliterate your enemies." Ilara felt the words like a physical blow, a vise squeezing her heart. Caspian was exploiting Ronan's deepest anxieties, his ingrained responsibility, his desperate urge to safeguard those in his charge. The curse amplified these instincts, twisting them into weapons. A member of Caspian's pack lunged, a blur of fur and fangs. Ronan roared, intercepting the attack with savage intensity, making Ilara flinch. He moved with breathtaking power and speed, claws rending flesh, teeth tearing into bone. The air thickened with the metallic tang of blood and the sounds of ferocious combat. They were still outnumbered. More warriors pressed the assault, relentless, their movements fueled by dark influence. Ronan fought with the ferocity of something cornered, but he couldn't be everywhere at once. Ilara saw a warrior breach Ronan's defenses, its eyes locked on her. It snarled, teeth bared, and sprang. Ronan saw it too. Time distorted. Ilara braced for the blow, her heart hammering. This was the end. But then Ronan shifted. He hurled himself in front of her, taking the impact. The warrior's claws raked across his shoulder, tearing through skin. He stumbled, yet remained upright, his body shuddering with pain and exertion. "Ronan," Ilara cried, her voice raw with terror. He turned to her, his eyes pleading. "Run, Ilara. Please, run." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I won't abandon you." Caspian's voice echoed, taunting, triumphant. Such devotion, such naivete. "He cannot safeguard you, little witch. He is mine." The words were the tipping point. Something within Ronan fractured. He straightened, muscles straining, bones contorting beneath his skin. A guttural growl ripped free, a sound that vibrated through Ilara, a sound of pain, of raw fury, of profound despair. He was changing. Not the gradual shift she had seen before, but a violent, uncontrolled metamorphosis. The air shimmered around him, crackling with malignant energy. His eyes blackened, devoid of light, of humanity. His claws extended, becoming razor-edged blades. His teeth lengthened into fangs, dripping venom. He was surrendering to the curse. Fully, completely, irrevocably. Ilara stared, aghast, as the last vestiges of the man she cherished dissolved, replaced by the monstrous shadow Alpha. The wolf, lurking beneath the surface, had broken its chains, consumed by darkness. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Ronan, no." He didn't respond. He didn't even seem to register her presence. His gaze was fixed on Caspian's warriors, his body coiled with lethal energy. He was no longer Ronan. He was a weapon, a force of annihilation, a creature of pure shadow. He turned toward his adversaries and unleashed a roar that shook the very foundations of the stone circle. The sound was deafening, terrifying, a primal scream of rage and anguish. He lunged, a blur of ebony fur and flashing talons. The warriors scattered before him, their bravado replaced by terror. He carved through them with ease, his power amplified by the curse, his movements fueled by unbridled wrath. Ilara watched, horrified, as he slaughtered his own pack, his former comrades, their screams tearing through the night. He was no longer protecting them. He was eradicating them. She stumbled back, her heart shattering. She had failed. She had come to save him, to sever the curse, to rekindle his humanity. Instead, she had driven him further into the abyss. He had embraced the curse. He had chosen power over love, darkness over light, destruction over redemption. In doing so, he had shattered her. He paused amidst the carnage, his vacant eyes locking onto her. For a fleeting heartbeat, she imagined she saw a spark of recognition, a whisper of the man she had known. But it vanished in an instant, replaced by the cold, empty stare of the Shadow Alpha. He turned away, his attention returning to the slaughter. He was lost, beyond recovery. Ilara knew she had to flee. There was nothing more she could do. She turned and fled, blindly, into the night, the death cries echoing in her ears. The image of Ronan's monstrous face seared into her mind. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs screamed, until she could no longer hear the sounds of the carnage. She collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, her body racked with grief and despair. She had been destined to save him, but he had chosen the curse, and in doing so, he had damned them both. Anchor in the storm, the mingled odors of iron and evergreens choked her. Ilara lurched onward, the forest a gauntlet of grasping limbs that tore at her already ravaged clothes. Each tear was a sharp reminder of the hollowness in her chest. Behind her, the woods resounded with a gruesome chorus of carnage. The howls had mutated beyond Ronan's own, morphing into something monstrous, a primal roar that threatened to unravel her very being. Escape was paramount. She had to flee from the horrifying truth of his transformation. Looking back was unthinkable. Every rustle underfoot, each snapped twig, sent icy tendrils of fear snaking through her veins. Was he stalking her? Could reason even touch him now? The Ronan she cherished, the love she knew, lay entombed beneath layers of shadow, consumed by the very curse he had so desperately resisted. And she, fueled by naive, unwavering belief, had been the one to unleash it. She stumbled, impacting the earth with jarring force. The air tasted acrid, thick with the metallic tang of his fury, his agony, his utter obliteration. A sob, a frail and pathetic sound escaped her, immediately swallowed by the indifferent wilderness. Huddled into a ball, a discarded plaything amidst the ancient trees, the image of his eyes, formerly warm hazel pools, now blazing with infernal fire, burned into her memory. Then, a profound hush, an oppressive, unnatural quiet settled, smothering her more completely than any physical burden. The howling had ceased. The screams were silent. Only the sigh of wind remained, whispering through the branches, bearing ghosts of what once was. He had triumphed. Caspian's forces were no more, annihilated. But at what cost? A vision slammed into her, Ronan towering over the devastation, his fur slick with gore, his form contorted into a horrific imitation of the Alpha she adored. The Shadow Alpha, the monster of legend, and she, Ilara, had been the instrument of his becoming. She pushed herself upright, legs unsteady, spirit fractured. What was the purpose? She had poured her life into rescuing him, into dissolving the curse, into restoring him to the light. And she had failed. Absolutely, irreversibly failed. The biting cruelty, of choice. He had embraced the curse, coveted the power. Chosen her? No, that was a comforting fiction she clung to. He had chosen to safeguard her, perhaps, but in that decision he had doomed himself. And her. She began to walk again, placing one foot mechanically ahead of the other, driven only by the basic imperative to endure. But where was she headed? What remained to fight for? The pack was decimated. Ronan was lost. And Shishi was nothing. As she blundered through the underbrush, a forgotten memory flickered to life. Ronan, before the curse had fully seized him, his voice ragged with despair, confessing his deepest dread. It's a darkness, Ilara, a consuming hunger. And I'm afraid I'll vanish within it. He had sensed it. Deep down, he had foreseen it. And she, in her hubris, had imagined she could simply overwhelm the encroaching darkness with love and light. She had reduced the curse to a mere riddle to be solved, an ailment to be cured. But it was far, far more complex. It was a manifestation of his most buried fears, his long-held traumas, his intrinsic belief that he was unworthy of affection. The fractured looking glass. The curse wasn't solely about power. It was about exquisite agony. And Ronan had been immersed in that torment for years. She froze, comprehension striking her with stunning force. She had attempted to save him from the outside, trying to drag him kicking and screaming toward the light. But she had never truly embraced the darkness he harbored. She had never permitted him to exist as both Ronan and the curse. She had sought to reshape him, not to love him. A renewed determination bloomed within her, tentative but unyielding. She couldn't rescue him by force. She couldn't nullify the curse with incantations or concoctions. She had to accept him, every aspect of him, the brilliance and the shadows, the man and the monster. The wind intensified, lashing her hair across her face, and for the first time since the transformation, she felt not fear. She felt understanding. A profound, gut-level understanding of the burden he carried, the malevolence he fought. And she knew, with an unwavering conviction that resonated throughout her being, that she couldn't abandon him. She wouldn't strive to alter him. She would be his anchor. A steadfast point in the raging storm, a guiding star in the inky blackness. She would be the lifeline he could grasp when the curse threatened to engulf him entirely. It wouldn't be painless. It would be fraught with danger. But she was no longer the naive girl who had blindly put faith in love's power. She was something sturdier, something tempered in the crucible of loss and betrayal. She was prepared to fight, not against him, but for him. She closed her eyes, focusing on the faint residue of his presence, a fragile thread of connection that persisted. Ronan, she breathed, her voice nearly lost in the wind's howl. I'm not abandoning you. I'm here. I'm staying. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The sun was descending, splattering the sky with bruised purples and streaks of crimson. A storm approached, but she was ready. She would confront the darkness alongside him, not as his savior, but as his mate, his anchor, his unwavering, complete acceptance. The sole remaining question. Would he allow it? Would he permit her to be the one thing that could salvage him from himself? A deep rumble echoed in the distance. He was coming, and she would be prepared. Shattering the darkness, the air shivered. A deep, primeval hum that vibrated through Ilara as she faced the ancient stone circle. Knotted, age-old trees reached like skeletal arms around it, their branches seeming to accuse. This was the crux. The wound in the world where the curse had festered for centuries, nourished by despair and treachery. The genesis. She felt its vile sentience, a frigid, murmuring horror that sought entry into her soul. Closing her eyes. She grasped the tenuous lifeline she'd established with Ronan, the echo of his forfeited humanity. It was frail, a candle battling a tempest, but present. It had to suffice. Inhaling deeply, Ilara spoke, her tone clear and firm despite the tremor in her breast. "I know you're present. I know you can hear. I've come to present an accord." The atmosphere snapped. A voice, primal and cruel, resounded in her mind, bypassing her eardrums completely. "An accord? What could you, insignificant mortal, possibly bargain?" "My existence," Ilara declared, her voice resolute. "I offer my life in exchange for Ronan's. Liberate him from the affliction. Allow him freedom." A ghastly laugh reverberated within the circle. "Naive girl, you believe your life holds such worth. The curse is embedded, woven deep into his very essence. It has become intrinsic to him." "It wasn't his choice," Ilara countered, her fists clenching. "He was betrayed, destroyed. He did not invite this shadow. I know he remains trapped within, struggling. Grant him an opportunity to prevail." "Sentimentality, a weakness I abhor. Very well. I consent to your proposal. But heed this, trivial mortal. Once the exchange is complete, there is no recall. Your life for his absolution." A straightforward trade. An icy surge engulfed her, and Ilara cried out as her vital essence was drawn forth, lunging toward the circle's heart. It was agonizing, a deliberate, searing immolation that threatened to obliterate her. Still, she remained upright, her focus fixed on the swirling darkness that had begun to coalesce in the air. Distantly, she detected Ronan's sound, a raw, desperate outcry that tore through the gloom. "Ilara!" He knew. He felt it. The connection between them, forged in anticipation and strengthened by adversity, now screamed in outrage. Ronan was battling the curse's venom. She could sense his torment, the agonizing tension between the darkness that craved dominance and the spark of humanity that resisted annihilation. She poured every ounce of her dwindling strength into that bond, channeling her love, her conviction, her unwavering devotion into the delicate thread that tethered them. "Fight, Ronan. I beg you. Fight. I know you're still there. Don't let it win." The pain intensified, and Ilara's vision blurred. Her knees gave way, but she fought to remain standing. She had to stay resolute, for him. Abruptly, a radiant light erupted from the circle's center, obliterating the darkness. The primeval voice howled in fury as the energy surged, tearing through the nexus, dissolving the curse's grasp. Ronan. He was resisting. The landscape surrounding her seemed to contort and buckle, the trees groaning as the curse's potency diminished. She could feel the shadow receding, forced back by insurmountable willpower. A figure materialized from the light, outlined against the brilliant radiance. It was Ronan, but no longer the monstrous shadow alpha she had witnessed. This was something else, something more. He was still altered, bearing the marks of the curse, but the bestial features retreated, unveiling glimpses of the man she cherished. His eyes, once vacant pools of darkness, now burned with intense, desperate fire. He lurched toward her, his movements fragmented and erratic, as if battling his own anatomy. Ilara, he croaked, his voice ravaged. What have you sacrificed? I did what I had to do, she murmured, her voice faint. I believe in you, Ronan. I always will. He reached out, his hand trembling as he swept a stray strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was electric, sending a jolt of energy through her weakened frame. No! The ancient voice shrieked, its power ebbing. I refuse to be denied. A final wave of darkness erupted, striking out at Ronan, seeking to reclaim him. But it was futile. He had broken the chains. With a defiant bellow, Ronan channeled the light that engulfed him, converging it into a single searing lance. He struck the darkness head-on, shattering it into a million fragments. The hold voice fell silent. The curse was extinguished. Ronan crumpled, his body convulsing with tremors. Ilara crawled toward him, extending her hand to grasp his. His grip was feeble, but firm. He gazed at her, his eyes swirling with pain, gratitude, and an overwhelming love that mirrored her own. You rescued me, he rasped. You saved us all. We rescued each other. Ilara replied, her voice trembling with emotion. She understood the road ahead would be arduous and prolonged. The curse's scars would endure, a testament to the darkness they had conquered, but they would confront it in unison, stronger and more resilient than before. As dawn's earliest rays pierced through the trees, bathing the clearing in a gentle, golden glow, Ronan pulled her close. He held her tightly, his embrace a silent affirmation of protection and devotion. The shadows had vanished, shattered by their love, their selflessness, their unwavering belief in one another. And in its wake, a fresh day dawned, a day saturated with hope and the pledge of a future they would forge together, emancipated from the phantoms of the past. The air still throbbed, but now with the cadence of renewed life, a promise whispered on the breeze as they embraced, bound not by a curse, but by a love that had vanquished the darkness. A future forged in hope. Ronan's grip tightened on Ilara's hand as they reached the crest. The pack lands spread beneath them. The air, sharp with pine and earth, usually resonated with belonging, now felt burdened by uncertainty. He stole a glance at Ilara. Though the curse had left its mark, a pallor on her face and lines of pain etched around her eyes, her gaze shone with unwavering resolve. He was indebted to her beyond measure for his life, his sanity, for the very future he now dared to imagine. His answering squeeze was a pledge of enduring protection and love. Below, the pack's disquiet rippled through their restless movements and a scent laced with anxiety. They had borne witness to his monstrous transformation, the unbridled rage fueled by Caspian's treachery. Could trust be rebuilt from Ar? Such broken ground. How much fear lingered. Silence descended as they approached, a heavy blanket muffling the usual sounds of the clearing. Every eye fixed on them, a canvas of apprehension and nascent hope. He felt their unease, a tangible weight, yet refused to flinch under their scrutiny. He had battled the beast within, and Ilara's love had been his victory. Now, he would confront his pack with the same fortitude. My pack, Ronan's voice, amplified by his alpha command, cut through the silence. I stand before you, scarred but whole, released from the darkness that held me captive, from Caspian's insidious venom. Ilara redeemed me. He turned towards her, emotion thickening his voice. She risked everything to sever the curse, to return me to you, to myself. A ripple of murmurs spread through the pack. In some eyes, he detected comprehension, in others, lingering doubt. Words alone wouldn't suffice. He would need to prove himself, to earn back their faith through unwavering action. Gareth, an elder, his fur frosted with age, stepped forward, his gaze measuring and cautious. "Ronan," he croaked, his voice raspy with years, "we saw what you became. How can we be certain that monster is truly gone?" Ronan met his gaze steadily, unflinching. "The scars are a constant reminder, Gareth, of what I was, of what I could revert to should I yield to the shadows. But I won't. I have Ilara, whose love serves as my anchor, my shield against the encroaching darkness. And I have you, my pack. Your loyalty, your collective strength, will be my guiding light." Despite her lingering fragility, Ilara stepped forward, her voice ringing with clarity and resolve. "I understand your fear," she declared, her gaze sweeping over the assembly. "I recognize your hesitation, but Ronan is not defined by the creature you witnessed. He embodies strength, compassion, leadership worthy of your utmost trust. He was cursed, manipulated, but his core self never perished. It lay dormant, patiently awaiting liberation, and with your support, he will usher you toward a future devoid of fear, a future founded on the bedrock of hope." Her words resonated, a gauntlet thrown and a promise extended. He swelled with pride, with boundless gratitude for this woman who held unwavering faith in him even when he had questioned his own worth. A young she-wolf, barely an adult, ventured closer to Ilara, her eyes shimmering with curiosity. "Is it true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Did you truly offer yourself to the curse to save him?" Ilara nodded, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "I acted as I was compelled to act," she affirmed. "Ronan is my mate, my destined partner. I couldn't simply stand idly by and watch him succumb to the darkness." Tentatively, the young wolf reached out, her fingertips brushing against Ilara's hand, a gesture of empathy, of nascent acceptance. The small actions spoke volumes. Slowly, cautiously, the pack began to shift, like a tide turning. The fear hadn't dissipated entirely, but it was now infused with a burgeoning sense of possibility. They saw the ravages etched upon Ronan's face, the lingering pain reflected in Ilara's eyes, and they began to comprehend the magnitude of their sacrifice. They recognized the powerful love that bound them, a love that had defied the curse, a love potent enough to mend their fractured community. Ronan turned to Ilara, his eyes brimming with emotion. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with unshed tears. "For everything." She smiled, her grip tightening on his hand. "We accomplished this together," she replied, "and we will continue to do so together." The ensuing days bled into weeks, and the pack initiated the arduous process of healing. Ronan, with Ilara steadfastly by his side, dedicated himself to rebuilding their society, cultivating trust, and forging understanding. He implemented new training protocols, emphasizing self-mastery and resistance to manipulation. He convened open forums, encouraging transparent communication and directly addressing emerging concerns. He shared his experiences with raw honesty, his struggles, his fears, and his aspirations, exposing his vulnerability, his humanity. Though still recuperating, Ilara became a luminous beacon of hope for the pack. Her gentle demeanor, her boundless compassion, and her quiet strength served as an inspiration to all. She taught them about healing, about forgiveness, about the restorative force of love. She mentored the younger wolves, guiding them to understand their own emotions, to cultivate their intrinsic potential. One morning, As the first blush of dawn painted the sky in vibrant hues of gold and rose, Ronan and Ilara stood atop their territory's highest peak, gazing out at the nascent day. The air was invigorating, clean, carrying the promise of new beginnings. The pack stirred below, their movements purposeful, their scent exuding a newfound quiet assurance. "They are healing," Ilara observed, her voice a soft caress, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the rising sun. Ronan nodded, his arms circling her shoulders. "We are healing," he corrected gently. He glanced at the scars that laced his hands, indelible reminders of the darkness he had confronted. But he felt neither terror nor shame. He felt gratitude and a profound sense of optimism. He recalled Lyra, the deception, the insidious manipulation, and the curse that had almost destroyed him. He refused to allow those past wounds to dictate his future. He would forge a different path. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the crisp morning air. "Our love," he said, turning to Ilara, "will become a legend whispered among the packs, a testament to hope's tenacity, to unwavering devotion, to the transformative power of choosing light over darkness." Ilara nestled closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "A future forged in unwavering hope," she whispered, her voice imbued with profound love. And as they jointly witnessed the sunrise, bathed in the radiant light of a new dawn, they were acutely aware that their journey was far from completion, but they stood ready to confront whatever tribulations lay ahead, united as one. Their bond, tested by the crucible of darkness and fortified by selfless sacrifice, served as a guiding light for their pack, a symbol of enduring resilience and a living testament to the boundless power of love.